It was a warm Tuesday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day I had built my peaceful life around. I had just finished folding the last of the clean laundry when a sharp bang split the quiet. The front door slammed so hard, the hinges groaned. A rush of heavy footsteps pounded through the hallway, quick, angry, urgent. "Mom, where are you?" It was Marcus. My heart stuttered. At 42, my son's voice hadn't carried that teenage fury in years. I stepped into the hallway, the soft cotton of a folded towel still clutched in my hand. The sunlight from the back garden spilled over the polished hardwood, but everything inside felt suddenly cold. Marcus stood in the living room, cheeks flushed, green eyes blazing the same eyes that once lit up with childhood curiosity. His fists clenched at his sides. "Why did Chloe call me crying?" he demanded. "She said you changed the password on your card. She was humiliated at the grocery store, couldn't pay for a cart full of food." I swallowed hard. "Marcus, lower your voice. We're educated people. Yes, I changed the password because it's my card." "Yours?" He stepped closer, the smell of city sweat and expensive cologne filling the space between us. "We're family. You can't just block us out when we need something." Inside me, a small, cold knot tightened. "The card is in my name. It's my money." "Selfish," he shot back. "Chloe was buying things for the house, food, cleaning supplies, normal things." But I knew better. Only last week I'd reviewed the statements. $200 in makeup, $300 on clothes, $500 at a high-end restaurant. Still, I kept calm. "Marcus, if you need money for something specific, we can talk, but I won't leave my card open for anyone to use." "Anyone?" His voice cracked higher. "You're calling my wife just anyone?" "She's welcome in this house," I said evenly, "but my credit card isn't a family service." He paced the living room like a caged animal. His shoes struck the floor in hard, angry beats. The faint citrus polish I'd used on the wood that morning mixed with the sharp scent of his frustration. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. You've always helped everyone. And now, when your own family needs support, you turn miserly." That word cut deep. Miser. I, who had raised him alone after his father died, who had worked double shifts to pay for his college, who had given him the down payment for his apartment. "Marcus, I will not let you speak to me like this in my own home." "Then explain it," he pressed. "Why change the password overnight without telling us?" I reviewed my statements and found expenses I didn't authorize. A lot of money leaving without my consent. He froze for a beat. "Chloe told me she always asked you." "She's lying." The words escaped before I could temper them. He looked at me as if I'd slapped him. "I won't let you insult my wife." "I'm not insulting her. I'm telling the truth." "The truth," he snapped, "is you're getting paranoid. Maybe it's time someone else handled your finances." The knot in my stomach hardened into a cold stone. "I think you need to leave, Marcus." "I'm not leaving until we fix this. Give me the new password." "No." My voice didn't waver. "This is my house and my decision. If Chloe needs something, she can ask me directly." He glared at me, eyes full of ice. "This isn't over. You'll regret it when you see how this affects our relationship." I drew a long breath. If our relationship depends on a credit card, maybe it isn't a relationship at all. His jaw worked as if he might shout again, but instead, he turned sharply. The front door closed with a heavy final thud. Through the window, I watched his car peel away, tires squealing as it turned the corner too fast. The house fell into a strange, heavy silence. Not the soft, peaceful kind I loved in the mornings, but a silence that pressed against the walls. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one where I had once nursed Marcus as an infant, and let the stillness seep into me like cold water. The answering machine clicked. Chloe's sharp voice sliced through. "Sylvia, I know you're there. I hope you're happy with what you've done. Marcus is devastated. We're your family." Click. For a long time I stayed there, the ticking wall clock suddenly loud in the quiet. In 70 years I had weathered grief, widowhood, and lean years. But nothing had prepared me for the sound of my own child turning on me. As twilight deepened, I tried to focus on simple tasks, peeling potatoes, wiping counters. The kitchen smelled of onions and damp earth from the basil I'd cut. Yet nothing could cover the bitter taste of betrayal. A single thought throbbed in my mind. This isn't really about a password. It's about control. And in my bones, I sensed something darker ahead. The house felt hollow after Marcus left, like a seashell that had once held life. As I tidied the kitchen and stacked dishes to dry, memories surfaced, uninvited memories of a time when my son's voice meant laughter, not threats. I was 40 when Robert died of a sudden heart attack. The morning after the funeral, I remember standing at the kitchen sink, staring out at the damp garden. My boy was only 12, pale and silent at the breakfast table. That day I decided our home would run on steadiness. Same coffee at 6, same after-school snacks, same bedtime prayers. Routines became our shelter. I worked double shifts as a school secretary, saved every dollar, and kept meticulous ledgers. By the time Marcus entered college, we had survived years of lean budgets without ever missing a bill. When he earned his first job as an accountant, I felt our sacrifices had bloomed into something solid. For years, we were a close team. He'd visit every Sunday, bringing a bottle of red wine and a cheerful appetite. "Mom, your beef stew is better than any restaurant," he'd say, ladling a second helping. We played cards in the living room, our laughter blending with the clink of spoons against bowls. Then he met Chloe. I can still see that evening as clearly as if it's pressed between glass. I was stirring macaroni and cheese when Marcus appeared at the door, a rare excitement in his step. Beside him was a tall, slim young woman with perfect blonde hair and nails as neat as pearls. "Mom, this is Chloe, the woman of my life." Her handshake was firm but cool, her smile bright but assessing, as if she were quietly cataloging every corner of my modest house. Over dinner, she complimented my cooking, admired the garden, and asked about our family photos. Marcus looked so happy that I told myself to ignore the faint stiffness behind her politeness. The next months seemed harmless. Chloe sometimes brought flowers, helped with dishes, even shared funny stories from her boutique job downtown. I paid for half their wedding without hesitation. "It's a mother's joy," I told my neighbors. And when the newlyweds visited for Sunday lunches, I felt the house grow warm again, like the old days when Robert was alive. But tiny cracks formed early. One evening, Chloe stayed behind in the kitchen while Marcus fetched his jacket. She leaned close, perfume sweet as gardenias. "Sylvia, could we borrow $200? We're a bit tight with apartment expenses. We'll pay you Friday." Of course I said yes. What is $200 to a mother when her children are starting out? Friday passed, and when I gently asked, Marcus smiled and said, "We'll pay soon, Mom. You know we're good for it." Soon became later. Later became never. New requests followed. $300 for clothes Chloe needed for work, $500 for a sudden rent hike. Each time the words were coded in charm just until next payday. "We promise," and each time I gave in. I told myself it was normal for a young couple to struggle. Hadn't Robert and I scrimped when we first bought this house? But the sums kept climbing. The Sunday lunches shifted from cozy chats to subtle negotiations. Marcus would push his plate aside and begin, "We're thinking of upgrading the car. It would help me get a promotion." Chloe would nod, eyes bright, already picturing the purchase. By the 6th month I had lent them nearly $5,000. When I finally brought it up, Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "Mom, you don't have to keep such exact accounts. We're family." Family. That word, once warm, began to feel like a key being turned in a lock. Chloe's tone also changed. She spoke with casual entitlement, as though my help was a monthly subscription. "It's just a little advance, Sylvia," she'd say, her manicured hand brushing mine. "Families don't count every penny." Then came the credit card. One evening she phoned, voice trembling. "My card is blocked and Mom needs urgent medicine. Could I borrow yours just for today?" Of course I agreed. At midnight I checked my online statement. $150 at the pharmacy. Yes, but also $80 on cosmetics, $200 on clothes, $30 at a fine restaurant. When I asked her about it the next morning, she wept delicately. "I'm so sorry. There were sales I couldn't miss. I'll pay you back tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. Soon Chloe was using my card for endless emergencies. Shoes for her sister's birthday, a new phone, a wedding gift for Marcus's colleague. Each time she promised repayment. Each time Marcus defended her with a tired shrug. "Mom, you have enough savings. Why be petty?" Petty. Miser. Those words started to echo in my head at night like dripping water. I, who had never missed a church tithe, who still brought soup to sick neighbors, was now the selfish one. I stopped sleeping soundly. Sometimes I'd wake at 2 a.m., heart thudding, the faint hum of the refrigerator loud as a drum. I'd tiptoe to the kitchen, pull out my notebook, and try to balance the numbers. No matter how I calculated, the conclusion was the same. My savings were shrinking faster than I could replenish them. It wasn't just the money. It was the small trespasses that spoke of deeper violation. I'd find drawers slightly ajar after they visited. Important papers moved an inch from where I'd placed them. And then one morning, while cleaning the guest room, I discovered a tiny piece of paper under the bed. My credit card number, scrawled in Chloe's tidy handwriting, the 3 security digits neatly circled. A chill spread through me. Had she copied the card without asking? Was it just forgetfulness or careful planning? I tried to dismiss it, but a mother's instincts are hard to silence. The air in my house began to feel charged, as if invisible wires ran beneath the floorboards, carrying a current of danger. Then came the final straw. A call from my bank about a $1,200 electronics purchase. I hadn't bought anything. I told them to block the card immediately. Within minutes, Chloe called, her voice sharp. "Sylvia, what did you do? My card is full at the grocery store, and the card's declined." "It isn't your card," I said, heart hammering. "It's mine, and I blocked it because of unauthorized charges." A long pause, then a forced laugh. "Marcus needed a computer for work. It was a bargain. We knew you'd say no." That single sentence made my blood run cold. We knew you'd say no, not a slip, a confession. As I hung up, the house felt different, still familiar in furniture and scent, but stripped of innocence. I walked to the window and stared at the garden Robert and I had planted decades ago. The geraniums were in full bloom, but to me, they looked like warning lights in the dusk. I understood then that the problem wasn't a forgotten payment or a one-time extravagance. It was a plan slow, deliberate, and dangerously close to something criminal. And deep down, I feared the worst was still to come. The next mornings felt brittle, like thin ice over deep water. I kept to my careful rituals, coffee at 6, watering the begonias as the sun warmed the tiles, but even those small comforts tasted different. The garden's sweet, earthy scent no longer soothed me. I kept seeing Marcus's eyes that day he stormed in, green and sharp as shattered glass. 2 days after blocking the card, the phone rang while I was pruning the geraniums. It was Marcus. "Mom, we need to talk. Chloe is embarrassed and furious. You humiliated her." "I protected myself," I said calmly, but my heart thudded. He sighed, exasperated. "You're overreacting. Chloe and I can't live like this, always begging for permission. Maybe it's time someone else managed your finances." The suggestion landed like a knife, my own son, hinting I wasn't fit to handle the money I'd earned over decades. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dim kitchen, the clock ticking like a slow metronome. Around midnight, I spread my bank statements across the table, each page a quiet accusation. The lamp cast yellow pools of light over numbers that no longer added up. I took a deep breath and began to calculate. Month by month, the pattern sharpened. For every legitimate grocery charge, there were luxury purchases, perfume, spa visits, high-end restaurants, adding up to thousands. Some transactions occurred while I was home on the phone with friends, making it impossible that I had swiped the card myself. The refrigerator hummed softly, like an accomplice to their theft. A sudden realization chilled me. Someone had another copy of my card. I searched my house with a flashlight until I reached the lockbox where I kept my will, house deed, and Robert's old letters. Beneath those papers lay a perfect photocopy of my credit card, both sides, with the 3-digit code. A neat note in Chloe's handwriting read, "For emergencies, C." My breath caught. Emergencies? No. This was strategy. At dawn, I phoned the bank. "Cancel the card," I instructed, "and send me a full report of every transaction in the last 2 years. The representative hesitated. "Has anyone else had access to your details?" "My daughter-in-law," I admitted, the words tasting like rust. "But not with my permission." He promised a detailed report by courier within 3 business days. I hung up and leaned against the counter, shaking. Outside, birdsong filled the early light, an almost cruel contrast to the panic in my chest. By afternoon, the retaliation began. First came a string of calls: Marcus, then Chloe, then Marcus again. I let them ring into the answering machine. Their messages piled up like smoke. Mom, this is childish. Sylvia, you're acting paranoid. We only ever used the card for emergencies. Why punish us? When I didn't respond, the knocks followed. 3 sharp raps on the door, then silence. I peered through the curtain once and saw a familiar shape, Marcus's broad shoulders, standing stiffly on the porch. I stayed quiet until he left. The next day, Chloe appeared unannounced. She rang the doorbell with studied calm, carrying a bouquet of white roses. "Hi, Sylvia," she said sweetly. "Let's talk." I should have closed the door. Instead, I let her in, the scent of the flowers too clean and false. She sat on the sofa as if she owned the place. "Why are you shutting us out?" she began, voice soft as honey. "We're family. You've always trusted us. Why change now?" I stayed standing, arms folded, because I found a photocopy of my card with your handwriting. Her smile didn't flicker. "Oh, that? Just in case of emergencies. You know, if we ever lost the card while helping you. You made more copies." "No, of course not," she said smoothly. "Why would we?" Something in her eyes, a quick, calculating flick, told me she was lying. I felt like a mouse who has finally seen the trap. "Chloe, I want my card back, and I want all access closed." She exhaled dramatically. "Sylvia, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We only want to help manage things. At your age, it's easy to forget details. Maybe Marcus should handle the finances." "That will never happen," I said, sharper than I intended. The sweetness left her face. "You might regret this," she said quietly. "Emergencies don't wait for permission." Then she left, leaving the roses behind like a white flag that smelled of threat. That evening, the house felt watched. Each creak of wood, each rustle from the garden made me glance toward the windows. I double-locked every door. 3 days later, the bank's report arrived. Page after page of transactions, $25,000 gone in 2 years. Worse, there were cash withdrawals at 3 in the morning. My hands trembled as I dialed Marcus. "Son, there are ATM withdrawals while I was asleep." "That was me," he said after a pause. "One night we needed cash for a taxi." "One night? There are 6 withdrawals." He exhaled sharply. "Mom, emergencies don't always happen at convenient hours." Something inside me went cold. He wasn't even pretending anymore. "We need to talk in person," he said, and hung up. Within the hour, Marcus and Chloe arrived without knocking. They still had the key I'd given them long ago for real emergencies. The sound of the lock turning was like an invasion. They came in quietly this time, no shouting, just a heavy, deliberate calm. Marcus sat across from me. Chloe leaned against the mantel, arms folded. "You've gone too far," Marcus began. "You're treating us like criminals." "I just want to protect my money." "You've changed," Chloe said. "You used to be generous, loving. Now you're suspicious, paranoid." That word again, paranoid. I heard Robert's voice from long ago. "Trust your instincts, Syl." My instincts screamed that this was no misunderstanding. I placed the report on the coffee table. "Explain the purchases made at the exact same time in different stores." Chloe barely glanced at the papers. "That's easy. Marcus was buying me a surprise while I had dinner elsewhere. 2 cards, 2 places. Perfectly normal." I slid out the photocopy I had found. "And this?" "Oh, that," she said lightly, "was just a backup. I already told you." Their explanations came too quickly, like lines rehearsed in a play. Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Mom, give us 1 more month with access to prove we're trustworthy. If you're still not satisfied, we'll stop asking forever." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an ultimatum dressed as a gift. I stood and met his gaze. "No, this ends now." For a long second, no one moved. Then Marcus straightened and said, "If that's your final decision, we'll have to consider other ways to protect this family." A chill slid through me. Other ways. When they finally left, the house seemed to exhale with me. But the quiet wasn't relief, it was warning. I felt it in the low hum of the fridge, in the metallic taste of the air. Something darker than unpaid debts had just stepped over my doorstep. The morning after their last visit, the house seemed to hold its breath. Even the birdsong outside felt cautious, as if the world itself expected trouble. I moved through my routine coffee, a short walk through the garden, trying to believe life could stay ordinary. But the air in my chest was tight. By late afternoon, the phone began to ring again. First Marcus, then Chloe, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let each call slide to the answering machine. Their messages came in layers, pleading, scolding, finally accusing. Mom, this silence isn't healthy. We need to talk. Sylvia, you're letting paranoia ruin our family. Paranoia. Again, that word, repeated like a spell meant to break my will. 3 quiet days passed. On the 4th, the spell changed form. A polite knock came at 10 in the morning. When I opened the door, a man in a navy suit stood on the porch, a leather briefcase in one hand. Mrs. Johnson? I'm Mr. Roberts from Hazen and Associates. Your son Marcus has asked us to initiate a legal guardianship review for your finances. The words struck like ice water. A guardianship review? Yes, ma'am. He's concerned about signs of confusion and erratic decisions. This is a preliminary visit to explain your rights. My knees weakened. I motioned him inside, needing the chair behind me. He sat across the table, calm and professional, while I clutched a napkin like a lifeline. He outlined the process: medical evaluations, court hearings, the possibility that a judge could hand control of my savings to someone else, someone like Marcus. I managed to ask the one question that mattered. What can I do to defend myself? Hire legal counsel, gather financial records, have a doctor verify your mental fitness. If they file formally, you'll have 30 days to respond. He left a business card on the table, bowed politely, and walked out, leaving a silence so heavy I could hear the refrigerator motor start and stop. I sat there for a long time. The man had been courteous, almost gentle, but his words felt like a threat with legal teeth. My own son was preparing to prove I was unfit to handle the money I'd earned by a lifetime of labor. My first impulse was to cry. Instead, I reached for the phone and called Alma Davis, my neighbor of 15 years. She arrived within 20 minutes, her coat smelling faintly of cinnamon and the cold outside. Over tea, I told her everything. The creeping debts, the secret photocopy of my card, the nighttime withdrawals, the sudden talk of guardianship. Alma listened without interrupting, her face a map of concern. You're not imagining things, she said finally. I've seen it before: grown children draining a parent's savings, then calling them senile when they resist. You need a lawyer, Sylvia. Someone who fights these cases every day. But if I fight, I could lose Marcus completely. Alma took my trembling hands. The Marcus who loved you enough to protect you is already gone. What's left is someone who values your money more than your trust. You can't lose what's already been taken. Her words pierced me with grief and clarity. I wiped my eyes and said, Then help me find that lawyer. I know one, she replied. Vincent Harris. He's defended older adults in cases just like this. That evening, we gathered every bank statement, every email, every handwritten note. As I sorted through the papers, a dull fear hardened into something sharper: determination. But Marcus and Chloe weren't finished. The next morning, as I watered the begonias, 2 strangers paused outside my gate, talking just loudly enough for me to hear. That's the house, one said. The lady who thinks her own son is a thief. So sad. Yeah, my grandma acted the same before she lost her mind, the other replied. They walked on, their whispers trailing like smoke. My hand shook so badly I spilled water onto the brick path. By evening, the campaign had widened. 3 more neighbors I didn't know came to my door claiming to sell cleaning services, each trying to peer inside. I shut the door firmly. Later, I noticed faint scuff marks near the lock, as if someone had tested it. When night fell, I found a fresh scratch down the side of my car. The words, "Crazy Miser," etched in red spray paint. The letters glowed in the porch light like a wound. I phoned Alma immediately. They've started something new, I whispered. I'll stay over, she said without hesitation. That night, she slept on my couch. Her quiet presence steadied me, but I still woke at 3 a.m. to the phone ringing. I answered, pulse racing. Chloe's voice came through, low and distorted, as if she spoke through cloth. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You're destroying a family over dirty money. Ask your neighbors what your late husband really did at night. Do you even know where his savings came from? Then silence. Robert had been an accountant who never worked past 6. Her accusation was a lie, but it showed how far she would go. They wanted to smear not only me, but Robert's memory. At dawn, Alma found me sitting in the kitchen, untouched cup of coffee cooling beside me. "They're trying to break you," she said, laying a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Don't let them." I nodded, the word guardianship burning in my mind like a brand. Later that day, Alma and I drove downtown to Vincent Harris's office. The building smelled of polished wood and old paper. Vincent, a tall man with silver hair and steady eyes, welcomed us with quiet authority. "Tell me everything," he said, sliding a yellow legal pad toward me. I spoke for nearly an hour, recounting every detail. The slow financial drain, the photocopy of my card, the late-night withdrawals, the threats and rumors, and finally, the visit from Mr. Roberts. Vincent listened without interrupting, his pen moving steadily. When I finished, he looked up. "Mrs. Johnson, what you've described is classic family financial abuse. We'll fight the guardianship petition and expose the unauthorized use of your accounts, but we must act immediately." The knot of fear inside me loosened just enough for a breath. "You believe me?" "Absolutely, and we can prove it." As Alma and I left his office, the city evening smelled of rain and hot pavement. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. The fight would be hard, but I was no longer alone. Still, as we drove home, one question haunted me. If Marcus was willing to paint me as unstable, what would he try next when he realized I had hired a lawyer? Whatever it was, I knew the storm was far from over. The first thing Vincent did was restore the rhythm I had lost. "We'll make order out of the chaos," he said, sliding a blank legal pad across his desk. "One page for every month. One column for legitimate household spending, one for suspect transactions, and one for anything that flat out shouldn't exist." His voice was calm, not kind in the sugary way Chloe used, but steady in the way a lighthouse is kind to ships. Back home, Alma brewed coffee while I opened my metal lockbox and spread the last 2 years of my life across the dining table. My garden showed through the window in patient greens, as if the begonias were keeping vigil. The papers smelled of toner and thyme. Alma read aloud each line. I wrote, "Grocery trips that matched my receipts went in the first column. Perfumeries, boutiques, spas, restaurants second column. Cash withdrawals at 3:07 a.m., 2:41 a.m., 3:22 a.m., third column, each circled in red, the ink bleeding like a wound." Vincent's paralegal, a brisk woman named Tasha, arrived the next morning with a portable scanner and a soft voice. She taped a small recorder beneath my console table by the front door. "If the knocking gets aggressive, we'll have it," and showed me how to start an audio memo on my phone each time I received a threatening call. She snapped photos of the words scrawled on my car and the faint pry marks near the deadbolt. She photographed my credit card photocopy with Chloe's Neat for Emergencies C-note and labeled the image, Exhibit A. That afternoon, Vincent called. "We've sent preservation letters to the stores and banks. No one is to destroy surveillance footage or transaction records. We'll need your permission to pull your phone logs as well." "You have it," I said, feeling the faintest lift in my chest. For 3 days, Alma and I lived like archivists. We logged the ring time of every call, the time of every knock, the plate numbers of idling cars that lingered outside. At 10:14 p.m. One night, 3 women I didn't know strolled past, voices pitched just a shade too loud. "That's the house. Poor thing. Paranoia at her age is common." Alma leaned out our darkened window and snapped their photo without flash. "They wanted an audience," she murmured. "Now they have one." The harassment didn't stop, it mutated. One morning, I found a glossy pamphlet shoved under my door, Concerned Children and Aging Parents, How to Recognize Financial Confusion. A certain passage was highlighted in neon, Sudden Mistrust of Loved Ones. I felt the heat rise in my face, then caught my reflection in the hall mirror older. Yes, but not diminished. I set the pamphlet down and penciled the time and date into the log. Tasha called with updates in the dry, efficient way that comforted me. "We've pulled IP addresses for the online orders, Mrs. Johnson." The shipments went to Marcus's address, but the orders originated at 3 different IPs, one from their apartment, one from Chloe's boutique, and one from a cafe, 2 blocks away they frequent. Store cameras confirm Chloe using your card number at least 7 times. Also, the mall ATM camera shows a woman matching Chloe's build wearing a hoodie at 3:07 a.m. The machine timestamps align with your statement. Does it show her face? Half-shadowed, Tasha said. But the bracelets match those in her Instagram posts. We've already captured those screenshots. Instagram. My stomach lurched. My private losses posted beside latte art and new shoes. 2 days later, Vincent sat in my living room with a folder thick as a phone book. He drew a measured breath. There's more. They didn't just use your card, they used your identity. 3 additional credit lines were opened online in your name and mailed to Marcus's address. Total balance, nearly $15,000. Applications were completed with your social security number, your birth date, and your old landline as a verification contact. We've already placed fraud alerts and freezes with the 3 credit bureaus. I gripped the arms of my chair until my fingers ached. So I owe? We'll dispute it, he said firmly. Given the IP evidence and the mailing address, I'm confident. Alma reached for my hand. Her palm was warm, anchoring me back to the room. Vincent looked around my neat house, the polished table, Robert's framed photograph, the geraniums glowing in the afternoon light. Mrs. Johnson, we're also filing a police report for identity theft and financial elder abuse. This is the correct name for what's happening. When the story is told, it will be told in your language, not theirs. In my language, not paranoia, not stingy miser. My language, theft, fraud, abuse. The filing changed the air. That evening, the knocks grew harder. The recorder captured Chloe's voice, muffled by the door, coaxing then cutting. Sylvia, let's be reasonable. It won't look good when people hear you called the police on your own son. Later, a male voice I didn't recognize whispered through the wood. Drop it. I started an audio memo, narrating the time and exact words like a witness on the stand. The phone rang past midnight. I let it go to the machine. Marcus's voice, thick with something I didn't recognize, fear, anger, filled the kitchen. Mom, call me. You've got this all wrong. We can fix it if you stop now. Don't embarrass us. Embarrass us. I wrote it down. The next morning, I found a small crack in the garden gate latch, thin as a hairline but new. I photographed it with Alma's help, measuring tape pressed against the break. We'll replace the latch, she said, but we won't erase the evidence. Vincent's strategy unfolded like a careful chess game. He filed for a temporary restraining order as the guardianship petition rumor hardened into an actual filing. Mr. Roberts's firm, just as promised. Vincent responded with a stack of our exhibits and a motion to consolidate the hearings so a judge could see the pattern. The spending, the harassment, the identity theft, and finally, the legal attempt to seize control when the money stream slowed. Predators escalate when access closes, he said. We'll show that escalation. In the middle of that storm, small mercies returned. Alma cooked black bean soup and left containers in my freezer. Tasha texted me each time a new piece of evidence landed. Serve footage from Grand Table secured. Boutique receipt, signed with your name but wrong signature curvature, our expert flagged it. Vincent came by at odd hours with papers to sign and questions to answer. But sometimes we spoke of other things, flowers that thrive in partial shade, books he loved as a boy, the way a courtroom smells like dust and tension. Human talk, the kind that stitches you back together. One afternoon, while Tasha and I labeled envelopes, a police officer called to confirm my report and ask a few more questions. His tone was respectful. When I hung up, I stared for a moment at Robert's picture on the mantel. We're doing it, Rob, I whispered. We're turning on the lights. The lights revealed more than I wanted to see. Our phone records showed that while Chloe used my card at a boutique at 8:02 p.m., my landline had an active call with my book club friend from 7:55 to 8:26, the same period. Vincent smiled tightly when he matched timestamps. You couldn't be in 2 places at once. Juries like facts that obey physics. Night fell earlier each day, or maybe it only felt that way. The porch light buzzed. A moth beat itself silly against the glass. At 2:19 a.m., a car idled outside for 12 minutes. Alma wrote the plate number in our log, and Tasha ran it the next morning. A rental. The week before the hearing, the pressure shifted again. Marcus called at noon from a number I didn't recognize. I answered out of habit. "Mom," he said, breathless. "Chloe says you've turned everyone against us. We're drowning here. If you drop the charges, we'll pay everything back. We'll sell the computer. We'll—" His voice cracked, then steadied. "Don't destroy your family over money." "You already destroyed your family for money," I said, not unkindly but like a diagnosis. "You chose this road." He was silent, then colder. "Then we'll prove in court that you're not capable. We have people willing to testify about your confusion." "Strangers who wandered by my house to gossip?" I asked softly. "Or neighbors who know the smell of my soup?" He hung up. I sat very still and listened to the refrigerator hum, the clock tick, the small house breathe. On the day Vincent brought the full hearing binder, the sky was a hard, bright blue. He placed the book on my table with care, as if he were setting down a living thing. Tabs labeled transactions, surveillance, phone logs, harassment, medical, credit files, signature analysis. The cover sheet bore my name in clean black type, Sylvia Johnson, guardianship petition, and counterclaims. "Tomorrow," Vincent said, "we show the court who you are." "I'm afraid," I admitted, not of the judge, of looking at Marcus and not recognizing my boy. Vincent sat back, thoughtful. "Recognition is not the same as truth. We'll show the truth." I stood and walked to the window. The afternoon sun threw long rectangles across the floor. In my garden, the white geraniums were bright, as small moons. I touched the glass, cool beneath my fingers, and saw my reflection, older, yes, but steady, the way my house has always stood through storms. That night, Alma tucked the binder into her tote, as if it were a newborn. I set out the navy dress I'd worn to Robert's retirement dinner and polished my low heels. At 3 a.m., the phone rang again. We let the machine take it. Chloe's voice, flat and brittle. "After tomorrow, you won't have to worry about passwords." The recording clicked and whirred to a stop. I stared into the dark and whispered to the ceiling, to the years and the boy I had loved, to the judge I hadn't met yet, to the ledger of my life, "Let there be light." Morning would come, the courthouse would smell of wax and paper and nerves. And I, who had been called a miser, a paranoid, a confused old woman, would walk in with my name on the cover sheet and the truth in a binder thick enough to bend the light. The courthouse smelled of wax and paper and nerves. A pale March sun spilled through high windows, catching on brass railings polished by generations of hands. Alma walked beside me, steady as a lighthouse. Vincent carried a thick binder marked Johnson versus Johnson, guardianship and fraud. Inside the courtroom, Marcus and Chloe sat with their lawyer at the far table. My breath caught when Marcus looked up. For a heartbeat, I searched for my boy, the one who once built pillow forts in our living room. He dropped his eyes to the floor. Chloe's gaze met mine with a cold steadiness that turned my stomach. The judge entered, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a voice like a gavel. "This court will hear the matter of Marcus Johnson's petition for guardianship over the finances of Sylvia Johnson and the counterclaims of financial fraud and identity theft." Vincent rose first, calm and deliberate. "Your Honor, we will demonstrate that Mrs. Johnson is mentally sound and the victim of a deliberate, escalating pattern of financial abuse by her son and daughter-in-law." He began with the bank statements, every page dated, highlighted, and cross-referenced. He showed the $25,000 in unauthorized purchases, designer clothing, spas, electronics. Then he moved to the late-night ATM withdrawals, matching each one to my landline call logs, proving I was home at those times. Each fact clicked into place like a lock sliding shut. The judge nodded toward me. "Mrs. Johnson, please testify." I stood, legs trembling but voice steady. 2 years ago, I allowed my son and his wife to use my credit card for small emergencies. What began as trust became theft. I never authorized the creation of extra credit accounts or cash withdrawals in the night. When I protected my finances, they called me paranoid and tried to declare me incompetent. I felt Vincent's quiet presence behind me, like a hand on my back. The judge listened without interrupting, his eyes kind but sharp. Next came our evidence from the stores, video of Chloe using my card while I was on the phone at home, and boutique receipts forged with my name. Vincent had even secured a handwriting analysis, proving the signatures were false. Then Dr. Paul Rodriguez, my physician of 15 years, testified. Mrs. Johnson's mental capacity is entirely normal for her age. No signs of dementia, no cognitive decline. Marcus's lawyer tried to counter. He spoke of verbal authorizations and family misunderstandings, presenting two neighbors who claimed I had become forgetful. Vincent calmly produced their written statements from a prior week, both of which contradicted their live testimony, and cross-examined until their confidence crumbled. Finally, Marcus himself took the stand. He began with practiced charm. My mother always trusted me. I believed I had permission to help with finances. Vincent's questions were surgical. Did she ever sign a written authorization? No, but did she know about the 3 additional credit cards opened in her name? Marcus hesitated. Not directly. And the cash withdrawals at 3 in the morning, why did you never mention them to her? We needed cash fast. Emergencies. Every week for months? Marcus's jaw tightened. Sometimes emergencies happen often. The judge's eyebrows lifted. The silence in the room grew heavy. Chloe tried a different tactic when it was her turn. She spoke of love, of wanting to make life easier for me. But when Vincent displayed the photocopy of my card with her handwriting and matched it to surveillance footage of simultaneous purchases in 2 cities, her explanations unraveled. At last the judge leaned forward. His voice carried the finality of stone. The evidence demonstrates a systematic pattern of financial abuse and identity fraud. The petition for guardianship is dismissed with prejudice. Marcus and Chloe Johnson are ordered to repay $25,000 plus interest and legal fees. The 3 fraudulent credit accounts are to be closed immediately and removed from Mrs. Johnson's record. A 1-year restraining order is issued. No direct contact. All communication must go through counsel. The gavel came down, echoing like a door slamming shut on 2 years of fear. Vincent squeezed my shoulder. You did it, Sylvia. I sat back, heart pounding. Across the aisle, Marcus buried his face in his hands. Chloe's lips were a thin, bloodless line. For a flicker of time, I almost reached out, then stopped. The boy I raised was gone, and no gesture could call him back. Outside, the courthouse steps smelled of rain on stone. Alma wrapped an arm around me. Justice, she said simply. Driving home, the world looked both familiar and utterly changed. Dogwoods were budding pink along Main Street. A bakery released the smell of warm bread. Life, real, ordinary life, had kept moving even as I'd fought for the right to steer my own. That evening I made tea in my quiet kitchen. The house breathed differently, lighter. Yet my heart carried both victory and ache. I had saved my home, my savings, my dignity. But a mother never celebrates the loss of a child, even one lost to greed. Later, Vincent stopped by with the official court packet. We sat in the soft lamplight, the binder between us. From now on, he said, any payment Marcus and Chloe make toward restitution will be tracked and enforced by the court. If they miss a deadline, we'll act. I traced the raised lettering of the judge's seal, proof that my voice had mattered. Thank you, I whispered. He shook his head. You saved yourself. We just helped show the truth. When he left, I walked out to the garden. The begonias glowed red in the porch light, their petals like tiny hearts still beating. I breathed in the damp, living scent of soil and rain, and for the first time in months I felt the ground beneath me as entirely my own. The night was quiet, but it was no longer a silence of fear. It was the clean hush of a storm finally passing. Tomorrow I would wake early, brew coffee, and start a new routine, not the rigid one I'd built out of fear, but one chosen freely. The long fight was over, yet the story of my life was not. Spring unfolded slowly, like a cautious gift. Weeks after the hearing, I woke one morning to birdsong so clear it felt like music written only for me. For the first time in 2 years, I brewed coffee without calculating what surprise expense might appear in my account. The house smelled of toast and fresh paint. Vincent had helped me touch up the front door the day before. The court's order worked as Vincent promised. Each month, a certified check arrived for restitution, a quiet acknowledgement of the damage done. I logged every payment in a new ledger, not from fear now, but from a need to mark my independence in ink. Sometimes, when I sealed an envelope of banking papers, I felt Robert beside me, as if he were nodding at the precision he once admired. Vincent visited often under the pretext of legal follow-ups, though by summer, those reasons thinned to simple companionship. We'd sit on the porch at twilight, sharing a pot of mint tea. He'd tell me about pro bono cases he'd taken other older adults who, after hearing my story in the local paper, had reached out for help. "You've started something bigger than you know," he said one evening, his voice gentle in the golden dusk. "People are calling their banks, checking their accounts. They're protecting themselves because of your courage." I smiled, the ache of past months softening. If my fight kept one person from feeling that helplessness, it was worth every sleepless night. We began small routines that stitched our lives together. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Sunday afternoons repotting flowers. On weekdays, Vincent would sometimes bring a folder of legal documents, then stay for dinner and help wash dishes. I realized I looked forward to the easy way he dried plates while humming an old jazz tune. It wasn't romance at first, more a quiet trust, like sunlight that doesn't announce itself but warms everything it touches. 6 months after the verdict, as the maples blushed with early autumn, Vincent surprised me with a question over tea. "Sylvia, would you like to travel again? Just a small trip, somewhere that isn't a courthouse." The idea startled me. I hadn't left town since Robert died. Where would we go? "There's a train route through the Blue Ridge Mountains, slow, scenic, no airports, just windows full of sky." I laughed, a sound freer than I'd heard from myself in years. "A train ride with a lawyer who hums jazz? That sounds safe enough." We booked it for October. While life settled, the past occasionally knocked. One late afternoon, my phone lit with an unfamiliar number. Something in me knew before I answered. "Mom?" Marcus's voice was thin, almost brittle. I hope I'm not breaking the order. I just needed to say I'm sorry." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I pictured the boy who once spent winter evenings building Lego cities at my feet. That boy felt very far away. "I hear you," I said finally. "Chloe left," he blurted. "She took what little we'd saved after the court payments. I'm starting over in another city. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I only wanted to tell you I understand now what I became." The old ache pressed at my chest. "Marcus," I said quietly, "I forgave you a long time ago, but forgiveness isn't forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back." "I know," his voice cracked. "Maybe, one day, I can show you I've changed. That will depend on your actions, not your words." There was a silence that felt like two roads parting. "Take care of yourself," I said. "You too, Mom." The line went dead. I stood for a long time in the kitchen, the smell of basil from the windowsill sharp in the cooling air. Love and hurt can live side by side, I realized, like roots of the same tree. Vincent arrived soon after, carrying a bag of fresh bread. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. Instead, he poured tea, and we sat together as twilight deepened, letting the silence speak. In the months that followed, our friendship unfolded into something tender and unmistakable. He never pressed, only offered presence, a steady warmth after years of tension. One quiet evening in early spring, while we pruned the bougainvillea, Vincent slipped his hand into mine. "Sylvia," he said, "you've given me back the hope that life can begin again, even after great losses. I'd like to spend the rest of mine proving that." The sky was the color of fading roses. My heart, cautious for so long, answered simply, "Yes." 6 months later, we married in a tiny ceremony under the pear tree in my back garden. Only Alma and Vincent's brother stood as witnesses. The air smelled of damp earth and fresh leaves. No lavish decor, no music beyond the rustle of branches, just the soft certainty that love can bloom at any age. Life with Vincent settled into a rhythm sweeter than I dared to imagine. Mornings began with shared coffee, evenings ended with books read side by side. He turned Robert's old study into a shared library, and together we filled the garden with new colors. Often he worked pro bono for elders facing financial abuse, carrying pieces of my story into every case. "Every victory for them," he told me one afternoon as we planted tulip bulbs, "feels like another victory for us." Sometimes I'd pause to watch him working among the flowers, sleeves rolled, a soft smile on his face. Gratitude would wash over me like gentle rain. Yet I never forgot what we had survived. I kept my financial safeguards strong, passwords updated, statements reviewed, trusted contacts limited. Not from fear, but from a hard-won respect for vigilance. Freedom, I had learned, requires care. On quiet nights, I still think of Marcus. I hope he has found steadiness, that he is learning the dignity of living within his means. A mother's heart never stops hoping, but I no longer wait by the phone. The life Vincent and I are building is not a replacement for the son I lost. It is proof that even after betrayal, love and trust can be planted anew. Sometimes, when dusk gathers and the garden glows in soft lantern light, I whisper a small prayer. Gratitude for the strength to say no, for the neighbors who stood beside me, for the law that listened, and for the late-blooming love that found me. I fought for my independence and gained more than I dared to dream, a partner who values me for who I am, not for what I own, and a life that is wholly, freely mine. Winter returned with soft gray skies and the smell of wood smoke drifting from neighborhood chimneys. Nearly a year had passed since the courtroom victory, and each month still brought a court-verified check from Marcus Smaller, now as the balance dwindled, but steady as clockwork. I recorded every deposit in a neat ledger that felt less like bookkeeping and more like a quiet affirmation. I am the steward of my own life. Vincent and I built gentle rituals around the changing seasons. On frosty mornings, he lit a fire in the living room while I brewed coffee, the steam curling like friendly ghosts. In the evenings, we read aloud, he with his deep lawyer's voice, I with my soft, deliberate cadence, until the grandfather clock chimed 9. Our house, once an anxious fortress, had become a place of laughter and peace. Sometimes we hosted Alma for Sunday dinners. Over bowls of stew, she teased Vincent about his careful note-taking. Still building legal fortresses in that library of yours? She'd laugh. Vincent would wink. Always. But now they're for other families who need shields like Sylvia once did. Indeed, his practice had changed. My case inspired him to dedicate part of every week to pro bono defense for elders facing financial exploitation. Some afternoons he returned from court with stories of widows who had stopped predators in time, thanks to lessons drawn from our fight. I listened with pride, knowing the darkness we endured now helped light someone else's way. Yet reminders of the past surfaced unexpectedly. One crisp afternoon, as I tended the garden, a neighbor mentioned seeing Marcus in town. He looked thinner, she said gently. Working at the hardware store, seemed quiet. That night I sat long by the window, tea cooling in my cup. I thought of the boy who once built Lego castles on this very rug, of the man who had chosen greed over trust. Grief came in a slow wave, not sharp, but deep, like an old bruise pressed by memory. I whispered a small prayer for his healing, even as I accepted that reconciliation might remain only a hope. In early spring, Marcus called again, careful to route the call through Vincent as the court order required. He left a short message. Mom, I'm steady now, no debts. Just wanted you to know I'm working and learning. I listened twice, heart tight, but I didn't call back. Some distances must remain until they can be bridged by action, not words. Life, meanwhile, kept unfolding in unexpected grace. Vincent and I planned short trips a weekend by the coast, a train ride through wildflower country. We planted a small orchard of pear and apple trees. We adopted a stray cat with eyes like green marbles and named her Clover. Ordinary joys, but to me they felt miraculous. Freedom reclaimed, trust rebuilt, love found in life's late chapter. One breezy May morning, we hosted a small gathering for neighbors who had quietly supported me during the hard months. We served lemonade and slices of Vincent's homemade pie under the blooming pear tree where we'd married. I thanked each guest for their kindness, remembering how a simple word of belief, like Alma's early reassurance you're not imagining things, had steadied me more than they could know. As twilight fell, I felt Robert's presence as vividly as the warm air around us. I imagined him smiling at this new chapter, at the garden alive with laughter, and the woman I had become, cautious yet unafraid, scarred yet whole. That night, as Vincent and I washed the last of the dishes, he paused, towel in hand. Sylvia, he said, when you fought for your independence, you gave me a gift too. You reminded me why I became a lawyer in the first place, to guard dignity. You've changed not only your life, but mine." I touched his arm, grateful beyond words. We rescued each other. The seasons kept turning. Summer blazed, autumn mellowed, and each morning I woke with a quiet conviction. Whatever storms might come, I would never again surrender my power. My garden proved the point once neglected during those fearful nights. It now thrived in riotous color. Bees hummed, pears ripened, and Clover the cat napped in warm patches of Sunday. Occasionally, Marcus sent a short update through Vincent. He had found steady work and was attending counseling. I wished him well in silence. Love, I'd learned, can continue without surrendering boundaries. On the anniversary of the court verdict, Vincent and I walked hand in hand through the bustling downtown market, where, a year earlier, I had first dared to feel hope. The scent of fresh bread and lilacs filled the air. I realized that what once smelled like survival now simply smelled like life. Later, sitting on our porch with the sunset painting the sky in slow oranges, I reflected on the journey. From the first uneasy credit card charge to the final gavel strike, I had crossed a landscape of betrayal, fear, and ultimately renewal. I had lost a son in one sense, but I had found a deeper self, one who knew that dignity is worth any price. I closed my eyes and listened to the soft evening sounds. Vincent humming an old jazz tune in the kitchen, Clover padding across the porch, the distant laughter of children on bicycles. These were the everyday miracles of freedom. I no longer needed to tell myself I was safe. I simply was. And I understood at last that the most enduring victories are not loud or quick. They bloom quietly, season by season, until one day you look around and realize the life you fought for is the life you're living. A soft, golden September light filled the house as Vincent and I prepared for another ordinary, beautiful day. Our pear trees were heavy with fruit, the roses alive with bees. From the kitchen came the sound of Clover, the cat, hopping onto her favorite windowsill. Life had found a gentle rhythm. Mornings in the garden, afternoons with books and music, evenings with friends. Nearly 2 years had passed since the day Marcus tried to take control of my finances. Time had softened the sting, but not erased the lessons. Each monthly restitution payment had arrived, carefully recorded and secured. The final check clearing the last of the court-ordered debt came in early August. Vincent and I deposited it together, a quiet ceremony of closure. I often thought of Marcus. Now and then, a short message reached me through Vincent, as required by the restraining order. He was working steadily at a hardware store, attending counseling, living within his means. I wished him well from a distance. A mother never stops hoping, but I had learned that hope can be steady and quiet, not the frantic kind that waits by the phone. Sometimes, standing by the bougainvillea, I remembered that first confrontation, the slammed door, the word paranoid used like a weapon. I remembered the nighttime calls, the spray-painted insult on my car, and I remembered the courtroom, where a judge affirmed that my instinct to protect myself had been reason, not madness. Each memory still hurt, but now they carried a different weight, not fear, but proof of the strength it took to stand alone. The house itself seemed to share in the healing. After long neglect, the garden had grown into a soft riot of color. Robert's old study was now our shared library, shelves lined with both of our lives. The once silent dining room rang with friendly conversations, Alma dropping by for tea, Vincent's grown children visiting with their kids, neighbors who had once only waved, now becoming true companions. One Saturday, Vincent and I hosted a small harvest dinner. Candles flickered in the twilight, catching on silver cutlery and smiling faces. I raised a glass to good neighbors, honest love, and the courage to start over. Alma squeezed my hand, eyes shining. Vincent kissed my cheek. In that moment, the long road from fear to freedom felt complete. Later that night, after guests had gone and dishes were done, Vincent and I lingered on the porch. The air smelled of ripe pears and wood smoke. He rested a hand on mine. "You know," he said softly, "you turned the worst chapter of your life into a story that protects others. That's rare." I looked out at the moonlit garden. Maybe that's what justice is meant to do, not just punish wrongs, but light the way forward. The next morning, I woke before dawn and sat in my favorite armchair, The same place where Marcus once drank hot cocoa as a child, where Robert and I once planned our future. Through the window, I watched the sky lighten. My heart was quiet, not from forgetting, but from understanding. I had defended my savings and my sanity. I had faced down lies, gaslighting, and legal intimidation. I had lost a son to greed and gained a partner in Vincent. I had built a life where love is chosen freely and boundaries are honored. These truths no longer needed to be shouted. They simply existed, like the steady growth of the garden. Before breakfast, I walked the perimeter of the yard. Dew beaded the grass like tiny glass beads. The pear tree where Vincent and I exchanged vows trembled lightly in the breeze. I bent to touch the soil rich, dark, alive. This land, this house, this life, all of it, wholly mine. Inside, Clover meowed for food. Vincent's footsteps followed, warm and familiar. "Good morning," he said, wrapping an arm around me. "Ready for coffee?" "Yes," I replied, smiling. "Ready for everything." I thought of other women, neighbors, strangers who might still feel that first cold grip of suspicion, sensing their hard-earned security slipping away through the hands of people they love. I wanted them to know, trust your instincts. You are not crazy for protecting what is yours. Love does not demand silence. Family does not demand blind access to your life. From the day Marcus stormed in demanding a password to the moment a judge returned my freedom, I had learned that saying no can be the most loving word of all. I stepped onto the porch as sunlight streamed over the garden. Vincent handed me a steaming mug. Together we watched the sky bloom from coral to clear blue. A new day, a new season ours.